Hello cupcakes, welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be particularly raw and personal, and I feel like it's the right time, so it's very much coming from my intuition that, you know, this is the time to share some of the content that's going to be included here. There's been a weirdness going on for me for a couple of years now, in relation to the channel and my relationship with what I put out on the channel. And the weirdness has come from knowing that I have very barely addressed with you guys my bereavement journey. Obviously, I put out the video in March of 2022 explaining that I had very suddenly and tragically lost my brother in a car accident, and my initial feelings on that and just responding to the event. And then I didn't really say anything else about it for quite a good long while. In fact, for me, I didn't know, to be honest, the extent to which I would even be able to engage with my channel for a really long time. I've never lost anyone that close to me before. By a long measure, we were exceptionally close. And so I did not know how I was going to react. I did not know how my relationship with the camera was going to be, and to what extent I was going to feel like creating things. So I had no sort of like framework for this. So it took me very much by surprise when, just a month after my brother died, I found myself really wanting to film a tea and tarot episode. And I was having a really shit day that day. All of the organising for my brother's memorial had very much been in full swing for a while, and I was staring down the barrel of this terrible gun, you know, knowing that I was going to have to go to the memorial and speak at the memorial and everything that was going to entail emotionally. And there was just so much stuff pressuring me and hurting me at that time. And I remember thinking, you know what would be so great if I could just drop all of this, forget about it for a second, you know, doll myself up, go on YouTube and just like sling some cards and talk about some cards. So that's what I did. And it was very therapeutic. There was something really fun and medicinal about that. And then after that, pretty much normal creative output resumed. I went back to talking about tarot and talking about magic and stuff like that. I have made 3 sort of dedicated videos talking about my personal grief journey and how I'm doing. I'll leave them all linked down below. One of them is called Personal Update, My Raw Honesty, and that one is very raw. The next one is Emotional Healing, Musings from a Heartbroken Witch, and I remember doing that one while I was staying in Bruges with a friend. And then the third one is Witchcraft, Healing and Creativity, and I really love that video. I think it's really, really honest, and it's really a piece of where I was at the time. But if I think about the plethora of videos that I've put out since my brother's death, that's a very, very small amount of content that's been made about what I'm personally going through, and that is with very good reason. I did not feel that it would be healthy or safe or productive for me personally to make my catastrophe into content and to put it out there as it was ongoing, and it still is ongoing. But for the first couple of years, I had this very clear instinct in mind that it's not a good idea to share what's happening, to let people into that in this very graphic way. That would not be healthy for you. Making ordinary videos about the topics that I ordinarily approach on YouTube gave me a massive sense of something stable and something to encourage my creative continuity, something to focus on, something I could feel proud of and happy with, and, you know, something I could engage with in the comments, you know, with people and enjoy that. And I have really enjoyed that. But in terms of talking about my grief and the depths of what I've been experiencing, I chose to keep that private because, you know, the internet is not a RSVP black tie event with a very select group of attendees that have been vetted by you. You know, the internet is very much open season. And some of the things that people say are not helpful and sometimes are not kind. They are not what you want to hear. They're not what you want to read. And so I think we have to take responsibility, if we're creators of content, for the reality that we open ourselves up to that stuff when we are putting ourselves out there. And that's not to make an excuse for anyone that would say anything cruel. It's just that I have to accept the fact that I could not expose those things and therefore not have to deal with the fallout from them and the anger that comes up or the weird feeling that comes up from receiving that kind of stuff. So, you know, I kind of knew that I had to be very present with myself, very present with my own journey of bereavement. And I don't think you can be entirely present with a catastrophe that you're going through, or I can't anyway. I can't be entirely present with it if I'm thinking about how I'm going to explain it, how I'm going to package it, how it's going to work in terms of content creation. It just doesn't fit like that. And I'm glad that some people do get something from recording a really difficult thing they're going through and really letting people go on that journey with them. I think something about that is really amazing. And who knows, at another point in my life, I might feel very different and something might befall me and I might feel like really filming the absolute, you know, total fucking raw reality of it from start to finish. But with this, I was very precious about my journey and I definitely wanted to control very much the extent to which people were allowed to see that. And this brought up some worries for me, I'll be honest. I've worried on and off quite a lot. Clearly, I haven't let it stop me, mind you, but I have worried quite a lot that people think it's fucking weird that my brother would die and it would have such a profound impact on me, as I stated in the video when I announced his death. And then I could just go on to, you know, business as usual, just making videos about the stuff I usually make videos about. I thought people would find that strange. I thought people would find that cold. And maybe that people would assume from that I wasn't actually very close to my brother, which is not true. I was very close to my brother. We adored each other, to be frank. I mean, it was a great, great connection. I often used to say he would have been my friend if he wasn't my brother. If I met him at a rave or in the street or whatever, at a dinner party, we would have become friends. So I did worry about those things and the kind of, you know, the perception that people would have from me just sort of continuing on with my creative journey and making things in this very sort of normal way. But again, I had to think about what is best for me, what feeds me, never mind what other people might think or what people expect or what I'm supposed to do as a grieving person, but what would really feed me. And being here on YouTube and being on social media and, you know, having my business where I speak one-on-one with clients and I sling cards and stuff, all of that has been a very stabilizing force and I have needed it. And so I'm glad that I made that decision, but it has caused me some insecurity and some concern from time to time of like, wow, how is this coming across? You know, I almost feel like a Victorian widow having a cheeky little dance at the, you know, at the sort of barn dance or whatever. And I'm turning up in black, but I'm sort of like, you know, having a little Kaylee and everyone's kind of like, what the fuck's going on with her? Why is she behaving that way? Why isn't she drowning her sorrows? But yeah, I think that joy and creativity can be luminous and essential as part of survival. And so I'm glad I reach for those things, but it has not always been easy to reach for those things. So yeah, I think it would have been disingenuous of me to be very full on about my grieving journey and giving you updates and stuff. I also think it would have been dangerous for me, but I do have some stuff that I really want to say about it now. I feel like now is the time that I can collect my thoughts. This video is for those of you who are struggling, those of you who are bereaved, those of you who are going to be bereaved shortly, if you have someone in your life that you care for and you love who is dying. This is for those of you who want to understand how you can help maybe a bereaved person in your life, how you can come to see things from their point of view a little bit more. You know, this is not just for witches and mystics that are encountering bereavement, but I think more broadly, some of the things I talk about in this video are going to be about all kinds of grief that we encounter, right? Like, I think bereavement is not the only way that we can feel aggrieved. We can feel aggrieved by betrayal. We can feel aggrieved by heartbreak. We can feel aggrieved by unexpected and unfair changes to the plan. We can feel aggrieved even by our own skin shedding, when we can feel that we are changing and we are evolving and we want to look forward optimistically and hopefully, but we feel a loss. I think that death comes in many forms, but the grief that we experience around it overlaps. So if for any reason this would help you, even if it's only to understand more what I've been going through, then pull up a seat. This is going to be a long one. What I felt like doing in this video, my darlings, is just giving to you a collection of the things that I have experienced and the things that I've learned while I've been going through the darkest time in my natural life so far. This could never be all of the things that I've experienced and all of the things that I've understood. I'm still grieving and I'm still learning. And I also don't want to make this video like 6 hours long, but it's just a lot of the different weirdnesses and nuances and breakthroughs, I guess, that I've experienced. I wanted to condense some of that into some notes and bring it to you. The pain of discovering that my brother had died was just an immediate, all-consuming blast of agony. It's indescribable in language. I felt utterly lost immediately. I have never shed a skin so quickly in my life. I completely psycho-spiritually transformed just in that one moment, and I had no idea anymore of the shape of my soul, what I wanted for my future, how I felt about anything anymore, anything. It was extremely disorienting. I felt a burning hole inside me, and it was fucking unreal. I still remember it like it just happened, viscerally, tangibly. I remember that moment. I will never forget that moment. I cried so many times in the last 2 years until I literally couldn't fucking see through my eyeballs anymore. I couldn't stop. I still do this fairly regularly. 2 years is not a long time when you've lost one of the legends of your life. But yeah, in the beginning it was, well, there was nothing else to be done, right? When you find out someone so essential, someone so close, someone you've known for the whole of their life has died, really there's that weird bit between acknowledging it's happened and trying to plan how you're going to give them a collective ritual of goodbye in the form of a funeral or memorial. And in that time, and also for a lot of the time when you're planning the memorial, you are just a fucking mess. And the only responsibility that you have really, apart from, you know, helping with whatever needs to be done for the memorial, if you can, is to survive, is to just keep living, is to just defy the part of you that is saying, I want to go. I want to dip. This is too much. This is too much agony. This is too unfair. I can't process this. I can't understand this. I can never get over this. I can never move forward from this. So your task is really linking the bead of one moment to the bead of another moment. And in that time, you really experience grief physically to the full force that you can. It really is a deeply physical experience and very taxing on the body. I had such a demented, frenzied, all-consuming yearning for the one thing that I knew I could never have again, which was to hear my brother's voice, to sit with him, to laugh with him, to do yoga with him again, to cook food with him again. I would have cut off my writing arm for just 1 more hour with him. And it was just the savage reality of witnessing over and over, that will never happen, that will never happen, that is never going to be. It's done. On earth, it's done. In the material, it's the end. And it's just, it's unbelievable to, I can't put it into words. Just, you're fragmented. You're fractured on a soul level. And it's quite something. I wrote here in my notes when I was trying to think about how to capture the shock and the process of accepting. And I wrote, I would never again feel his brotherly bear hug, smile as I received a call from him, which we always started and ended with the same words. I would never crack up at his hilarious jokes, pause a while to absorb the wisdom he casually offered me during times of confusion. I would never go to a rave or a picnic or a house party with him again. I would never make a plan with him again, exchange tracks for our playlists, post each other art and music that we might like, lounge around in my mum's living room, have dance parties and sing-alongs, confide in each other about fears and relationships. Nick was one of my all-time favourite people. We had a close bond. I am filled with 1,000 stories that illustrate ways in which we knew each other's minds and loved each other's company. I clawed through the searing hot coals of my pain over those things, knowing that they would not come all that I could have had was had in full already. There would be no new conversations with him, no more new adventures. So yeah, pretty heavy. You could say that everything I've ever said about shepherding oneself through darkness and dealing with the most fucked up parts of life and taking your witchcraft with you and taking your sanity with you, all of that, as valid as it was, and as much as I would be willing to underline it and still put my name to it, was said before I went through this. And going through this opened a few extra doors in that horrendous house of darkness and the feeling of total loss and total devastation. There are many different ways to grieve. You know, there's just as many distinct styles of bereavement as there are people. Yes, we do categorize bereavers into, you know, intuitive and instrumental or whatever like that. We have kind of like archetypal ideas of what different grieving processes look like, but essentially every single individual finds their own way. Some individuals don't grieve in any way that we can see, and also in any inward way that they know about. They decide that they are going to shut it off. They're going to just hack it down. That it's like it didn't happen. No one can talk about it around them, and they don't talk about it to themselves. We know that does happen. That is the choice that some people make. It's indeed what they feel they have to do. I was never going to do that, guys. I was never going to do that. From the jump, I knew that I was going to feel my feelings and that I was going to do this properly. I was going to experience it all, and that there was no fucking way that I had done all of these years of spiritual work and practice witchcraft and really open myself up to the transpersonal and open myself up to the esoteric so that I could fucking let myself down in this moment and not do this, not really, really own it and feel it and do it, and not expect that it would change shape for me, that the agony of it wouldn't be all that it was. No, I was going to let that agony in for a cup of tea and let it be the many tentacled, terrifying, sharp, twisted thing that it was. And I made that decision, and I feel that's what I've been doing. That's really what I've been doing. I just haven't been putting it on display, showing it online, but it's very much been what is happening. If you'll allow me, my darlings, I want to read from my notes again. I put here, grieving someone close to you, someone with whom you shared a depth and a great mutual affection, who knew you their entire life, had private jokes with you, had a whole way of being with you, is one of the most mind-bendingly hard things you will ever have to do if you're actually letting yourself do it. Because let's face it, although there are different styles of grief and different ways of coping, it can't be denied that some people just completely shut off. They do not allow themselves to access that agony. They don't find a verbal, physical, creative, or spiritual outlet for it whatsoever, and may even act surprised when you ask them if they're okay. They might look at you as if a tragedy had not just occurred. And that could be what they need to do at the time. But for some, it does become a way of life. They cling to that coldness and that distance, and it's like that person that they lost never really existed. That was never going to be me. I committed to feel it all. I committed to honor it. I recognized that all of the spiritual work I'd been doing had accompanied me all the way to this tragic point, so that I would not lose faith in it just at the precise moment I needed it most. When it comes to spirituality, I did not reach for the things that I thought I would reach for. I didn't. It looked completely different, actually, to how I would have imagined it. If someone had asked me before Nick died, what do you think you would be doing and turning to and leaning on spiritually if something terrible like that befell you, I would have described a very different picture. I did not address my matron. I didn't want anything to do with my matron. For anyone who's not aware, my matron is Hel, the Norse underworld goddess. So you know things are going to be a bit dicey there, right? I didn't reach out for her. I also didn't reach out for tarot on any personal level. I didn't want to do cards. I didn't want to do ritual. I didn't want to go to my altar at all. I did want to pray rosary. That came pretty instantaneously. I remember in the very early days reaching for one of the rosaries that hangs on the side of my bed and just going through the Hail Mary. I didn't even have the strength for the glory beads. I was just doing Hail Mary and falling asleep with the rosary wrapped around my hand. So that was really interesting. I completely pulled back from, you know, the dark goddess, and I got right with the mother of God, essentially, who is the other, I guess you could say, head bitch in charge in my practice. So that was really interesting. I reached for the chimes and I reached for the chanting. I did do that. I did reach for nature, for trees, you know, for the earth, for rocks, for the air, the wind in my hair, that kind of thing. That felt right. Even at my worst points, I did want that. I did want to look at the moon. Even if I felt completely numb and totally bewildered and bereft and angry, I did want those things. I knew that they were medicinal in a subtle way, even if I couldn't always feel it. I also, interestingly, in the early days, reached for a lot of sacred texts, old and new. So, you know, I couldn't find my copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and I really, in the early days, out of nowhere, desperately wanted to read it. For those of you who are fans of like the Stoics or Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, you probably will understand why I wanted to read Meditations. So I reordered Meditations, which I've long felt is somewhat of a sacred text for me. I wanted to read The Art of War by Sun Tzu as well, so I ordered that. I hadn't read it for a long time. I wanted to read Sylvia Plath. I wanted to read Dylan Thomas. I wanted to read Oscar Wilde. I wanted to read Audre Lorde. I just wanted to read these writers who'd gotten me through so much shit. I wanted to read poetry, and the poetry that I like loved. And I wanted to read other things from Oscar Wilde too. I wanted to read De Profundis again, which I did cover to cover. And I reached for the Narnia Chronicles. I reached for the Vampire Chronicles. I reread Interview with the Vampire Lestat. And then I took a break, and now I'm actually reading Queen of the Damned. I want to go through all the Vampire Chronicles. I reached for things that I consider to be sacred texts, that I've long known were sacred texts. I also reached out for new stuff as well. I decided to finally really delve into the poetry of Charles Baudelaire, and so I ordered Baudelaire, and that was amazing the night that came. Yeah, I ordered Flowers of Evil, and it was very intense reading Charles Baudelaire under my covers by the light of my phone, sobbing. I read the Upanishads because my brother had read the Upanishads, and I had a copy on my bookshelf, which I'd never touched. I just wanted to have it because it's the Upanishads, and I have the Bhagavad Gita, and I might as well have rights, but I had never read it. So I started reading that. So there was a lot of reading going on, even in the first 4 months. I needed something to keep me breathing. And a lot of it was to do with that. I reached for my poetry. I'm a poet, and I wrote a lot of poems in the first 6 months after my brother's death. They poured out of me. I had so much poetry coming out of me, and I really felt like that was so devotional and so life-saving. And I reached for my work. To be honest with you, I really, not that long after the memorial, needed to get back to work. And I remember some of my first clients in the first month or so after I came back were like, "Are you sure this is okay? I feel awful booking a reading with you. I feel like I shouldn't be." And I was like, "No, please, this is everything I need right now. It's all good. Please, go on. What do you want to say? What are we doing?" Because that was just... And again, I had no idea I was going to be that way, right? Some people need ages off work, longer than they can get off work. And I'm not a rich woman by any means. I would have to go back to work at some point, my darlings. I'm not swimming in a guitar-shaped pool just yet. But I didn't need to go back to work when I did, not financially. I could have stayed off work longer. It was my choice. My work is part of my spiritual path. My work is one of the biggest pieces of my spiritual path. And I felt called to it. It makes me feel effectual. It helps me remember what's outside of myself. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that happen when your entire fucking world implodes and you're going through the darkest shit you can imagine. Obviously, if you can't relate to everything here, then understood. Everybody's journey of pain and grief and recovery, etc., is different. But these are a few hallmarks of my own experience so far. First of all, the vulnerability that I felt in the first few weeks especially, and then in the ongoing months after that, was unreal. I felt like a globule. That's how I'll describe it. I felt so unarmored and so terrified and in so much pain that I would walk to the shop sometimes and I would feel like a globule of goo, just nerves, just a jelly of nerves, right? No skin, no bone, no nothing to protect me. I felt like everything at any moment could just wreck me emotionally. I'd go to the shop and I'd be terrified of taking my headphones out of my ear to hear something that the shop attendant was saying, in case there was something on the radio, a song on the radio that would remind me of my brother, or that I couldn't in that moment hear. I felt like everything anyone could say to me that might hurt me would break me, that I had no defense against anything. It was very, very scary. I felt like at any moment, anything or anyone could splat me, and I had like no way of protecting myself. Life was just going on, and I had to deal with being so unshielded, psycho-spiritually raw, exposed to anything that could just rip me apart, because I'd already been ripped apart, right? Like there was just no layering on me at all. I've also experienced an incredible amount of physical tumult in the last 2 years. Like my circadian rhythm has at times been completely and utterly fucked, guys. Like I didn't even sleep for the first 3 days after I got this news. And the first year of my bereavement was characterized mainly by not being able to go to sleep, not wanting to go to sleep, because every time I woke up, I would remember that he died. It took me quite a long time to come to the point where it was a fact in my head upon waking, right? That liminal space between sleeping and waking, for me, was not a certain space of bereavement. And so I would come into consciousness and then remember, you know, he's still dead. This is still real. This wasn't a dream. This really happened. My brother is dead. And so I wanted to avoid that. I also wanted to avoid weird dreams, sad dreams. And I have had some very, very weird and very sad dreams. I've had some wondrous dreams too, where it was great to see him. But I've also had some awful, awful dreams that I wished that I'd never had, right? So I wanted to avoid sleep. And there was something about the surrender into sleep that felt wrong to me. It felt dangerous to me. So I stayed up for nights and nights and nights. I didn't take sleeping aids. I was scared of taking the usual pills that I would take if I really needed to knock myself out. I didn't want them. And my friends and loved ones would say, darling, why don't you just take a sleep aid? It's time now to take a sleeping tablet. And I'd be like, you don't understand. You can never understand. I can't. So that was bloody stressful. I would sort of catch little cat naps in the daytime at certain points, and that was it. I didn't have a long, decadent sleep for at least a year. I lost my appetite completely. I actually could not keep food down for the first few weeks on and off. In the end, I discovered that I could eat sushi and raspberries. That was it, guys. That was my choices, sushi or raspberries. And like just drinking a shed load of tea. I just couldn't deal with any other food. I couldn't deal with like hot food. I think that there was some very mixed up, weird old stuff coming through from suffering previously with an eating disorder, that desire for control, that self-destructive urge. Although I couldn't identify it consciously like that, I think that was clearly part of it. And the other thing about it was I felt that I just didn't want to nurture myself. If I couldn't nurture him, if I could no longer do nice things for him, make him feel good, enjoy that feeling of taking care of him in some way, which I used to love, and he used to love doing that for me too. I just couldn't. Food had no joy for me anymore. No joy. And I didn't worry. I was never like dangerously thin or anything like that. I was functioning. It was fine. It was doable. I've got a bit of meat on me that my body can use, right, if worse comes to the worst, but it's not going to be the best thing for your mental well-being to not be able to nurture yourself with food, right? So that was an issue. I had a lot of restlessness. I experienced a flare-up of my PVCs, which is premature ventricular contractions, also known as skipped beat. It's something that I've dealt with on and off through my life since I was about 19. But I haven't experienced it for a really long time, and I started to experience PVCs. I had hair loss. I've had hair loss in the last year and a half. Alopecia areata. I've had it before in the past when I was deeply stressed out, and it came back, and I lost a couple of patches of hair. And I now have an ovarian cyst, which you might say probably isn't related, but my mum and my auntie both themselves got ovarian cysts in their 30s when they were dealing with grief following the death of their mother. And so I feel like that's connected. I feel like that's too much of a coincidence that suddenly I now am dealing with an ovarian cyst and polymenorrhea that comes from that, which is when you have too many periods, right? Your periods just keep coming. I know if you're a patron of mine, you already know what I'm going through, and I've explained it in depth. But, you know, for everybody else, yeah, I'm dealing with an ovarian cyst right now. Very annoying. And I think that's connected. I think, of course, these things that are going on with my body are expressions of what is going on with my soul, with my mind, with my heart. It's so important when you are someone that's going through a really fucked up time, or when you're around someone that's going through a really fucked up time and you're trying to help them. Do not expect a perfect 10 from them when it comes to body, when it comes to sleep, when it comes to eating, when it comes to self-care. Believe me, anything that they're doing is probably them really, really trying their best. It's very hard to be in a human body when you don't want to be some of the time, and the whole time that you spend occupying that body is spent grappling with and passing through and detangling the most extraordinary amount of emotional pain. It's just so hard to keep track on everything. So any little success that you can achieve with putting a bit of nourishment into you or having a sleep for even an hour is great. You know, it should be always something that you celebrate, not something where you're like, oh, you know, you can have a bit more or do a bit more or eat this or whatever. I really urge you not to do that. Just celebrate every win. It's really, really hard. So every win should be acknowledged. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to be like, look, this is the situation. Your brother's dead. This is not a random Tuesday, babe. This is like a complete nightmare. So if this is all you can do, if this is all you can eat, if this is what needs to happen right now, okay. You know, so there is definitely a lot of tangled, difficult stuff to unlock with that. There's also a lot of mindset weirdness. You know, I went through a lot of stuff, difficult stuff, and I'm still going through difficult stuff relating to what's happening in my head. Not only, as I said, like the vulnerability thing, but also just like, God, the anger, the sheer bloody, like untamed anger. The anger comes from the disbelief that life could possibly go on without him. The anger comes from resenting everyone who's got a brother, especially if they're close to their brother and they get on with their brother. You know, the anger comes from just the unjust, unfair nature of this loss. One thing that I've thought quite a lot, actually, is that I can't imagine what my anger would be like if I lost my brother at the hands of a Russian soldier or an Israeli sniper. Can't imagine that. Because the anger that I feel when there's no one to blame, there's no one to blame with this accident. It's just an accident. There was nobody else involved. The anger that I feel, I can't imagine what it would be like if there was actually someone that was being negligent or being violent or acting with malice. That anger would be unbelievably meltdown, transmutationally fucked, guys. I would be absolutely fucking, I would be made of rage. I just couldn't imagine it. And I have friends who've lost people in such ways, who've lost people because of a negligent driver or because of a fucking war or whatever. And I really just like know how much it takes for them to live, because I feel so much anger at just a fluke, fucking stupid situation that had nothing to do with anyone else, and I'm fucking pissed. The anger is mixed up with the disbelief, the shock, which is mixed up with the resentment, which is mixed up with all of the triggers, right? Like I remember going to the Botanic Garden in Edinburgh with my lovely friend who has experienced a very close personal loss herself and was really there for me. I went up to see her just after my brother's memorial, and she and I spent some time together, which was really nurturing. And we were in the Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, and we were just walking along talking, and I felt so fragile and so raw. And I was surrounded by all of these beautiful trees, and my brother was very obsessed with trees. He was an arborist and a tree surgeon, and he was very well studied in trees. He knew their diseases, he knew their species, he was tree obsessed. So it was already like very intense, very healing, but very hard being in this Botanic Garden. And suddenly out of nowhere, I noticed that in front of me was a young girl holding her little brother's hand and running down the path together. And I saw it and I just stopped speaking and I was staring at it. And then my friend noticed what I was staring at and she just like held on to me. The triggers are just everywhere. The triggers are everywhere, guys. It's hard and it brings up a lot of weird emotion. A lot of tangled different emotions. I've experienced a lot of bereavement brain, you know, a lot of brain fog. That's not happening as much anymore by a long way. But in the early days, it was very much like, wow, massive bereavement brain, just like losing things that I just put down somewhere, inability to explain myself, inability to reach for the right word. I'd go into a shop and then forget what I went in there for. I'd forget things that people had just told me, you know, like full on bereavement brain. I experienced this very strong feeling of wanting to run away. I was obsessing over wanting to just start a new life, you know, just run away from everything, just kind of leave everything behind. This has come back again recently with the 2-year anniversary. It's come back really strongly, just this like impulse that I have, even to the point where when I first experienced it, I told my friends, like, guys, if you ever wake up one day and my phone is off and you don't know where I am, don't worry. I haven't done anything stupid. I just think I need to run away for a little while, and the urge might become so strong that I cannot, you know, ignore it. I might need to just run away for a little while to see how that feels and to prove to myself that it's not going to necessarily significantly improve my situation. You know, I just need to go somewhere else, catch a plane, go and stay in a hotel somewhere, just be somewhere where no one knows me and I have no responsibilities, nothing, you know, is on the calendar for me. I can just be a different person. I actually haven't done that. Of course, I've had some getaways and some, you know, times where I'm just exclusively grieving and I don't have any responsibilities and stuff. Nobody wants anything from me. Everybody knows that I'm at a spa hotel or I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And that's lovely. And that's a great privilege that I can have that time away. And being child free, I don't have to like arrange for childcare or, you know, deal with the feelings that I might have about leaving my children. I can just go. And I'm grateful for that. But what I mean is like the desire to run the fuck away, just like cut loose completely, and knowing intellectually that that's not going to help. It's not going to make things better. It's not going to suddenly make me feel like this wash of relief. Doesn't stop me from really wanting to do it. So that's been an obsession on and off. The meaninglessness is a big thing, you know, the existential fucking pit, the existential dungeon of like, what is the point? What is all this for? Why does anything matter? It's all silly without him. None of this makes any sense without him. Why should I without him? Who's going to make me? You know, all of that. Just doing a little fandango with nihilism at times. That's a very understandable reaction to a few different kinds of grief. And I have had that, no question. Wondering why he died and I didn't. Wondering why he died and I didn't. Agonizing over that. Knowing that the answer will never come. Knowing that it's almost like a futile question, but trying to also be compassionate towards myself in the asking of that question and in the precious tending to that question. That question has plagued me. Not only just like the injustice and the randomness, but also like why? You know, like, and that leads into a lot of other things. Like, well, I don't want to discuss the other things, but just other feelings that I have about myself and the value of my life and just, yeah, the meaninglessness, guys. The existential void that you become when something like this happens. I'm a good kind of existentialist, right? I'm the kind of existentialist that when I'm in that kind of mood, I know that I make the meaning. I choose the meaning. If there's no meaning, then I get to assign meaning. And that's cool as far as it goes. I can usually have a pretty good, worthwhile time with that. But the meaninglessness, the pointlessness, the futility that occurs to you and that runs through your body when your beloved brother has died in a car wreck, that is a different ball game. That is a different kettle of fucking fish. Let me tell you that. Oh my goddess. It's hard. It's hard to make your way out of that. You almost have to just breathe and shake and wait for it to pass. You have to just wait for it to pass, knowing that it will pass, having faith in the fact that it will. And for me, it would be like feeling that and just praying the Hail Mary under my breath. Or saying, Ong Namo Guru Dev Namo, Ong Namo Guru Dev Namo. I bow to the teacher that lives inside me. I bow to the teacher that lives inside me, right? These things that have really helped me for so long, over so many years. And just returning to them. Just returning to the simplicity of the 400-year-old oak tree of that kind of knowledge, that kind of saving device, life-saving device. Thinking about, you know, quoting June, I will not fear, fear is the mind killer, fear is the little death that brings total obliteration, I will face my fear. I mean, a lot of you are, you know, new to June from the new movies, but I've been watching the David Lynch version for a long time. I haven't read the book, okay, all right, hands up, don't gatekeep me now. But yeah, just thinking, I will not fear, fear is the mind killer. Just these things that have helped me over time so much. Thinking of Joan of Arc, I'm not afraid I was born to do this. I'm not afraid I was born to do this. I looked in the mirror at myself and said that to myself like a number of times before I went to my brother's memorial and read a speech in his honour. I looked in the mirror, all suited and booted with my headdress on, and I said, I'm not afraid. I was born to do this. And that's what it means to really use your spiritual tools. Not just to have them because they're fun or they're fancy or they're inspiring or it's cool or whatever, but to fucking use them when you're in the pit of despair. It was so powerful to me. I was like, wow, from my suicide attempt as a teenager to now in my late 30s, saying goodbye to my brother, Joan of Arc has been with me. The Maid of Orleans has been with me the whole time. These things are so potent. They are for something. And when it comes to the point where you really need them, they will materialize. You will reach for them like a clever, beautiful alchemist, like a scientist in your apothecary. You will know what is the thing that you need for the thing that you're going through, and you will reach for it. And you will say, oh, this old thing, this dusty old thing, I love this. I always knew this meant something, but I never knew how much until this moment. I've dealt with these massive grief waves. The grief waves, you know, those waves where they just come on and they start racing towards the shore, and you kind of can feel them, knowing that they're going to break over your head. And sometimes they'll be as a natural consequence of doing something that's related to him, you know, having a conversation that I knew I was going to have with his friend or his girlfriend or my mom or whatever. I know I'm going to get a grief wave, but grief waves also just come out of nowhere. It's just like I'll just be having a massive grief wave. And there was really no necessarily warning. After the first year, I realized, grief waves are just something that I need to announce so other people understand that I'm going through them. I cannot say sometimes their origin. It's just the remembering and the heaviness of that. And the other thing that comes up, which is even more confusing than the grief waves, is just the mood swings. I might not feel consciously like a mood swing has got anything to do with my brother's death. It's just that my mood now that he's dead swings on the head of a pin sometimes. I used to be able to predict my moods a lot more. I knew what was going to put me in a bad mood. I knew what contributed to a less positive mood. And I knew what kinds of situations I might be in that might make me feel a bit lower, or I knew that I had PMT. And so my mood was lower and I could expect it. It was kind of somewhat predictable. I could prepare for it. Not anymore. I really now experience just a instant. It's like the strings of a lift elevator are cut and it just starts plummeting. It's moving up and down, it's moving up and down. And then one of these weird mood swings comes in and it's just like someone's just cut the cables and the lift is plummeting out of nowhere. And that leads me to something else that I've been dealing with a lot. And that is falling in love again. I fell in love almost a year ago now with my beautiful partner. And it's been a really weird journey, understanding that he's the first person really that's ever fallen in love with me and that I've ever fallen in love with, because I was a different person entirely in a very significant way before my brother's death. And so really my partner now is the first person to know this version of me. And of course we could say that about every partner, right? We're different versions of ourselves through life. But I'm talking about in some fairly significant ways, I am changed. Really significant ways, right? I'm changed. And so it's very strange navigating love with him, knowing that he has taken this on. He is a part of this now. It affects him too. Not that he's in any way griping about it. He adores me and that's wonderful. But it's just really strange knowing that I'm falling in love, but there's this other piece happening where I'm falling in love as a person who sometimes just needs to leave and go and be alone, as a person who out of nowhere will just start breaking into floods of tears, as a person who really can't predict themselves that much anymore in the way that they used to be able to, as a person who needs more grace and more compassion than perhaps I've ever needed. Maybe even more grace and more compassion than I needed when I was quite mad as a teenager and in my very early 20s when I went through a breakdown or a series of breakdowns in conjunction. The amount of compassion that I needed then, the amount of understanding was way more than I could possibly get at that time, because I didn't really understand the fullness of my diagnoses and what that all meant until later, until I could advocate for myself more and I understood more. But I needed a lot of compassion then, a lot of patience. And now I might even need more than I did then, because I just don't know. I don't know how I'm going to be. I don't know sometimes what I need. And so it's knowing that my partner contends with that my partner never knew who I was before that. He met me after my brother's death, which is a great shame because my brother would have adored him. But that whole thing is crazy to think of too. I'm navigating this massive thing. I'm trying to steer a galleon through the choppy waves and the savage jutting rocks of grief. And my partner, in saying, I want to be with you, I'm in love with you, I don't want to just casually date you, I want to be with you, right? In saying that, he has said, I want to get on this ship. And I'm there like the captain, the bedraggled captain of this ship. And I'm like, are you sure? Because it gets really, there's a lot to navigate. And he's like, I'm up for it. And I remember times in the past where I wasn't on this crazy ship and I was on a chill private island when a lover met me, and it was it was a different ball game. That this person that I'm with now has agreed to take this crazy voyage with me. And that's so beautiful, but it's so scary. The numbness is a really big thing. Feeling numb, going numb. I didn't experience any numbness at first. For the first like half a year after my brother's passing, I was never numb. I was always feeling, deeply feeling, journaling loads, having therapy sessions about my grief, talking deeply to my brother's girlfriend about her grief and exchanging with her, right? I didn't ever numb out. So the first time that I started to feel numb, that I started to feel like I'm waking up and I'm not crying about him and I'm not thinking about him and I'm choosing to put his clothes and his art materials away instead of dealing with them. I don't want to touch them. I don't want to deal with them. I'm not ready. And feeling like I was intentionally not crying. The urge to cry would come, but I would be like, no, there's a pane of glass, in front of that. The first time that happened to me, I was scared. I was like, oh my God, no, I'm shutting down emotionally, what I feel and everything. This is not good. I can't do this. I realized that my nervous system actually needed to go numb, right? It was a tool of survival. And then I sort of like let go of the wheel and I thought, okay, you know what? I'm just numbing out, basically. And I remember my brother's girlfriend, who I'm so close to now, we have really supported each other through this fucking awful journey. I remember she noticed, she was like, I feel like you're checking out. I feel like, are you going through a numb phase? And I was like, yeah, I am. I don't want to let it happen. And she was like, yeah, it happened to me for like 3 days and I did freak out, but I thought it's probably necessary. My nervous system needs to calm down. I was like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. I don't think I'm going to be in it for too long, but right now it's just like there's a pane of glass between me and the visceral nature of that pain. Since then, I've had a few periods of numbness that have lasted for the longest one was 3 weeks. And by numb, I mean I've accepted that I've lost him. I've accepted that this terrible thing has happened, but I'm not letting myself engage with the feelings. The grief waves will kind of like hit the pane of glass. I'll be like, nope, and I'm thinking about lots of different things. I'm not actively thinking as much about the grief. I'm not processing it in therapy, that kind of thing. I've kind of just numbed out to it, basically. I've realized now, I've adjusted to the fact that that is a part of the process and I'm letting myself flow with that. The only reason I'm finding it easy is because I know damn well that I did not choose that as the default setting. And again, I'm not here to judge how anybody else grieves or how anybody else deals with pain. Not at all. Everyone has their ways and everyone has their reasons. But I made a very conscious decision from the get-go that I was not going to numb out, to pretend, to act like I was okay, to say, I've processed it, people die, like it's all good. I knew I wasn't going to do that. I had to feel my feelings because you know what? You either feel them now or you feel them later. You have to do it at some point, I feel like. Otherwise, you're going to go into self-destructive habits. And we all know, anyone that's watched my channel for the last few years, I am acquainted with self-destructive habits, okay? I'm a recovered self-harmer. I am recovered eating disorder, right? I have my ways of self-destructing. And I knew like that's not going to be happening. We're not going to be numbing out like that. And we're not going to be pretending. And we're not going to be like fobbing off other people's grief and being like, I'm fine, I'm cool with it. Things happen. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be in it. So I knew when this numbness started coming that like, okay, I need to let it happen. But at first it was terrifying, that numbness. I was like, no, I can't do that. It was like really, I questioned it morally. Trusting the numb phases is hard. The numb phase is different to when I'm just coping with my grief quite well. So for example, the 2-year anniversary of his death was this March, just gone. It was very, very hard, extremely difficult anniversary. Like it was so hard. That date will never mean anything else to me but that. It's just burned into my cells what happened on that day. I actually think that this anniversary the 2-year anniversary was like in some ways somehow worse than the first one. Maybe because I was more immersed in really navigating hardcore grief daily in a more extreme way with the first one. I don't know. Maybe it was because I feel like it was a topic of conversation more for his loved ones during the first one, and so I felt more supported. I really don't know, because my friends did know, my partner did know. Like I told people, you know, that they know when the anniversary of his death is, and they were really there for me. So it's not like I didn't have support. I insist on support, and I'm going to get to that in a minute in this video. But for whatever reason it was, the 2nd year anniversary of his death was worse than the first. And, you know, I really experienced afterwards this feeling of coping better. So the run up to the anniversary and the anniversary itself was really bloody hard. And the day afterwards was really hard too. After that, I went into an upswing. I wouldn't say that was numbness. That was just me like navigating the grief better, being more functional, feeling more with it and more able to engage and more able to enjoy things, but still feeling the pain and being able to talk about the pain and feeling moved to sometimes ask for support around the pain or go to my spiritual techniques with the pain. Numbness is when it's just like la 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 la. That's how it feels for me. It's just like la la, la. Like I'm not going there. I'm just not. Grief is not at the dinner table in my psyche, right? Grief is just like in another part of the house. Grief, we don't know her. That's numbness, I feel like. And to me, I've started to learn how numbness fits in to the picture. But when it first came along, I was like, you go, you're not healthy. I don't want you. You lead the way into down the bad staircase, into the attic of doom. But actually, if you're doing your grief, if you're consciously really letting yourself do your grief, expect some numbness, baby. That pendulum has got to swing in the other direction. It's got to. So I trust my numbness now, okay? I had to adjust, but now I trust. Another thing that I dealt with and I had to contend with a lot was the signs. There are periods of my life since the bereavement where the signs have been off the hinge, like all the time, really strong signs. And there are several different symbols and bits and pieces that are representative of my brother, things he loved, things he had tattoos of, things related to places we went or whatever, things that symbolize him that have come up in these really crazy ways. And I won't go into it, but maybe in another video at some point, I will talk about some of the most ridiculous signs that I had, not only foreshadowing his death, which is just really difficult to navigate, but really interesting to look at the ways in which his death was foreshadowed, but also after his death, just the incredible moments, overwhelming moments of signs exactly when I needed them, exactly what they had to be. And being able to be open to that as a witch is incredible, because I know that there are lots of people who aren't open to that. They're not symbolically literate, right? They don't deal in signs. Whereas I do. I've spent my entire spiritual life thinking very carefully and seriously about signs and the nature of signs and reading them and understanding them and seeing what they're supposed to be saying to me. So the signs have been truly life-giving and truly hope-giving, but they've also been overwhelming and surreal to the point where I sometimes felt like I was going to get knocked off my perch in terms of staying connected to the consensus versus going down that rabbit hole, following my brother into that symbol and like communing with him, being with him. So it's been incredible. I've had some insane signs, beautiful things, beautiful moments. And then other times I don't get a sign for a long time and I realize I haven't had a sign for a long time and I start to panic. I start to worry. I start to get upset. I start to question. But then a sign always comes again. Something always comes again to show me in spiritual terms that I'll always be connected to him, that his energy signatures are everywhere, that his legacy is alive and dancing and dynamic and cosmic, just like he was. he was just the most sensational, magnificent person. So that's been quite something. There's also this weird feeling of, I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but there's like sometimes in the last year, maybe just around year and a half, possibly, but definitely in the last year, so like the second year of grieving my brother, there's also been this really weird dance between what I call the Meltdown Me and the Filofax Me. So the Meltdown Me is the version of me that is just like, I'm overwhelmed with grief. My brother died. It's always going to be agony. And it is agony right now. And therefore, I can't do anything. I can't think anything. I can't reply to this email. I can't do this thing right now. I can't do what I said I was going to do for someone or with someone. That's not how today's going to work, right? I just have to do what the fuck I need to do. And the Filofax Me is the version of me that's like, you know what? Despite the fact that I'm grieving and despite the fact that all this is going on, I can handle this. I'm doing this. I'm enjoying the productivity and the way that it links me back into other things that are beautiful about life. And I feel like I'm enjoying getting things done and I'm enjoying feeling functional and effectual. And I can't wait to tick off these things on this to-do list and actually be in the business of living and making and thriving. Those two versions of me can do a little fandango over the course of just literally a couple of hours. And obviously, the better days for me are when the Meltdown Me comes in first, and then it's overtaken by the Filofax Me. And I'm like, oh, actually, I am going to be able to get back to my publisher today about that sample chapter and get those edits to my editor. I am going to be able to, send those emails to my activism group that I'm in and sort that out. Surprise, surprise, I am going to be able to run errands today. That's the better way round. The shitty way round, and it is shitty, is when I wake up in kind of a more Filofax Me type of mode. And then I descend, I crash in one of those, elevator plummet mood swings. And then I'm into Meltdown Me and I can't deal with anything. But I've already said I'll do something. I've already said I'll look at something or get something done. I've already confirmed with my colleague who works with me that I'm going to deliver XYZ thing or whatever. I've already decided I'm going to do a certain amount of word count. And then like Meltdown Me comes in and just messes with it. And I can't really argue with Meltdown Me that much. I mean, there's a few different ways in which I can argue with Meltdown Me. Like, for example, I have my clients on a schedule. I see my clients live. My clients are not interrupted by Meltdown Me because I will just like put that shit in my shoe in order to provide the absolute best service I can provide for a client. And then I'll deal with Meltdown Me afterwards. I can do that. It is possible. I'm very good at what I do. And I want to do what I am doing. Of course, there's been a couple of days since he died and I've come back to work where I've said, it's just a bad grief day, darling. I'm going to have to rearrange. But ordinarily, Meltdown Me won't get in the way of that. Meltdown Me is much more likely to get in the way of things like social engagements or, things I said I'd help somebody with or whatever. And it's just frustrating. Meltdown Me will definitely get in the way of my communication. I get like really bad. I already have communication anxiety. I'll leave a link down below to a video if you're interested in learning more about my communication anxiety, but also just communication fatigue, right? Like I will wake up feeling that I'm going to have a really good day in terms of getting back to people, sorting things out, answering client queries, replying to friends. And then Meltdown Me will come in, and Meltdown Me is very much like, he's dead, like in June. I can't remember how it goes in the new June, but in the original June, when, God damn it, what is the name of her? The Empress anyway, the Empress Atreides, when she realizes her husband is dead and she goes, he's dead, like that. That's what Meltdown Me sounds like, okay? And after that, I just can't, basically. So that's frustrating. The other weird, like, sort of thing I have with the scales, if you will, is this very strange thing that's happening at this 2-year mark now of my bereavement, where on the one hand, I feel like it's been forever ago. I feel like so much has happened and so many different stages of my grief have materialized. And I'm so far from where I was then, but also it feels like it's only been 5 minutes. It feels like raw as fuck. It feels like it only just happened. And both of those things are true. 2 years is a long time and also no time at all when you're grieving someone that you adored, that had a really close connection with you. My brother called it a cosmic bond. I was talking to him once about our connection and I said something and I said, "Do you think that's weird?" And he said, "No, I get that about you too. I think we have a cosmic bond." And I'm counting on that now. So yeah, it's like, on the one hand, I'll say to myself, oh my God, it's been so long and I've been through so much and I've come through so much and I've strengthened so much. But then there's this other perspective at other times when I'm in other moods where it's like, it's literally only been 2 years. I'm still a complete mess. I still don't know how I'm going to cope with this. I don't know if there's even more really difficult times coming with my grief and what that will mean for me and what that will mean for my loved ones. So it's just that dichotomy, it's that pendulum all the time. And having to know that I have to let that happen. I have to let that be. I have to contend with that. I want to talk to you a little bit about dealing with other people when you're going through something completely batshit bananas, just wall-to-wall pain, you know. We very rarely go through these kinds of things completely alone. Even if we are definitely consciously trying to go through it completely alone without outside interference, we often are not, you know. So obviously, for example, you might be helping out with arrangements for the funeral. You might be clearing out the possessions of the person who's died, or organising childcare for yourself so you can do certain responsibilities. You might be talking to other grieving people in your circle who also knew the person, or you might swiftly be having to take over the deceased person's responsibilities and pet care, etc., before you maybe feel ready. I think it's really important to gather our spiritual tools together and use them for that, you know. But I do think that if we allow ourselves to be pushed into doing too much on behalf of the group or on behalf of others, if we feel too inclined or too obligated, then we are going to end up finding it hard to handle our own stuff. So we do have to have boundaries. Even in bereavement, even with me being bereaved, right, I should have boundaries put on me. I should have, it should be okay for a friend to say to me, "Darling, I can't talk right now. I'm doing something, or I'm busy with someone else, or whatever. Can I call you tomorrow? Or are you in crisis, right? Or whatever." That should be okay. And so if you need to set those boundaries because you've been helping a lot and you've been really overstretching yourself, then you should feel able to do so. You're also, if you're around other people who are dealing with the same pain or the same grief, the same loss, then you're also dealing with their bereavement style, their way of dealing with things, right? They might have a totally different way of dealing with things than you do. So they might be reacting to things a lot more by trying to be practical and trying to be effectual and trying to be, action oriented. You might deal with things a lot more by like being in your deep emotion and maybe expressing things creatively to deal with stuff. And you might clash in that regard. You might have different opinions about how you want things set up, how you want to deal with stuff. And you might fundamentally need to agree on that shit. And that can be really difficult. So don't be afraid to talk to them at length and be strong in your boundaries, I think. Don't force yourself to shut up about what you're going through. Don't force yourself to downplay it. Don't force yourself to pretend. If somebody else doesn't want to talk about it or doesn't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, that's fine. But they've got no right to expect you to pretend that you're okay when you're not okay. They might not be the person that can assist you, but it's okay for you to need assistance. It just might not be them that can actually offer it to you. Don't feel like you have to put on some fucking show about what you're going through. You just don't, and you shouldn't have to. You're allowed to say, for example, that you can't attend a function because you're going through a bunch of shit. Your grief is bad. Your heartbreak is overwhelming, whatever it might be. You're allowed to say that. You don't have to rock up to an event just because they want you to. And similarly, on the other side of the spectrum, you're allowed to reclaim your life. You're allowed to go dancing. You're allowed to go to dinner. You're allowed to go on a date. Just because somebody else thinks that's not the way you should be grieving doesn't mean shit. They don't know you. They don't know how you are grieving, how you are dealing with whatever you're dealing with. They have an outside perspective, probably propped up on loads of assumptions. But that isn't the same as living what you're going through. The map is not the territory, and they are looking at the map and trying to tell you where to go, but they don't know what it's like to be in the territory, dealing with the shit from your perspective. So reclaim your life too. Say what you're ready for and what you're not ready for, and own that shit. You will find when you're going through really difficult times as well that people will say things that aren't helpful and that aren't what you want to hear. And it will vary from person to person. Here are some of the things I personally hate, okay? I hate when people say, at least you had a good relationship with your brother. You should feel lucky because you obviously had such a great relationship. Many, people don't have that with their siblings. So at least you had that. You were lucky. Not helpful. Not helpful. Obviously, I was lucky to have the magnificent caliber of relationship I had with my brother, but then he died in a fucking car accident. So is that lucky? I don't think it is. It's just not an appropriate thing to say as far as I'm concerned. Don't say it to me. I don't like that. I really don't like, death isn't really real. Death is just a doorway. He's only died physically, but he's not died etherically. Just shut up. Just stop. Okay? Stop. Do not like that. I also really don't like it when people say things like, I don't even know how you're doing this. I don't even know how you're standing up right now. If it was me and I lost my sibling, I would be a mess. I would be on the floor. You're so strong. I don't like that at all. You know what? If you want to tell me I'm so strong for the resilience that I've shown and the survival mode that I'm in, that's okay. I'll take that as a compliment. But to say that you would never be able to do that, you don't know how I'm doing it because you would never be able to, that to me makes me feel like you're trying to say that you love your sibling more than I love mine. And that in some way, there's a reason that I'm more capable of being strong, stronger than you imagine you would be. And at the end of the day, everyone who goes through terrible amounts of shit is the most people that go through it are ridiculously resilient in the face of it. Ridiculously. It is human nature. That resilience is gargantuan. It is godlike. It is ridiculous how strong people are. Have you seen the kids of Gaza dancing through the streets to celebrate Eid? With nothing. With so much trauma in them. With such a fragile grasp on what their future can even be. Human beings are fucking hard as fuck. They're hard as fuck. So you would be strong. You would be. But to say to me, you're so strong, if it was me, I'd be on the floor. I take that to mean that somehow it isn't affecting me as much as it would be affecting you. And so that, for me, is not a good compliment. Now, what do you do when people say things that don't help you? Especially if you've got people around you who say things like, God has a plan. God has a plan. God wanted this person as an angel or whatever. Whatever it is that people say that doesn't vibe with you, tell them. Tell them. Just say to them, I don't like it when people say that. It's not helpful. I know, darling, I know you mean well, but please don't say that to me. Give them a list of the things you would prefer they say to you. So many people just don't know straight up. They don't know how to talk to someone who's bereaved. They don't know how to talk to someone who's been through something completely fucked up. They just don't know how. They never learned in school and they've never come across it. They've never needed to do it. Or they've been going around saying irresponsible or insensitive shit and no one's told them. Tell them. Explain the nature of the support that you want. Don't be afraid to do that. You deserve to be able to qualify what it is you do and do not want when it comes to how you're treated and what is said to you. And remember, my darlings, not everyone gives the same kind of support. The person that you might ask to bring some shopping over for you, or to help you with something that you're struggling to understand, or to make a phone call for you or with you because you're not feeling strong enough, that person might not be the same person that you would ask to sit with you over a glass of wine and commiserate and cry and talk about memories. Those two people might not be the same people. I have certain people in my life who are really good at the practical stuff. They're really good at strategy. They get a lot from helping me to understand something or cope with something or go through the steps of something that I'm finding difficult because of my grief. But those people are not necessarily the same people that find it comfortable for me to sob and wail and break down and say the same thing 10 times over. You know, that's another friend. That's another person. Be very clear about the kind of support you're looking for and witness what kind of support somebody can give you. What are they really good at giving you? Go to them when you need that and go to someone else when you need something else. And if you can't go to anyone or you don't know who to go to God, go to the divine, go to your deities, your ancestors, go to the natural world. Go to the things that you've read about in witchy books, that you read about on your journey of mysticism that have really helped. Connect with the cosmos. Touch the exposed roots of an old tree. See what you can get from that, because it's electric, baby. It's straight fire. But definitely know where your support systems are and what they are best able to help you with. Sometimes I think we're just asking the wrong person to do something for us that really isn't in their resume for whatever reason. And that's okay. I'm better at certain things and not others as well. I'm that person that will hold the space when you need to just freak the fuck out, when you've no idea what's going on or how you feel. You just need to hear the words hit the air and you need someone else to paraphrase them back to you and listen to you unraveling them. Sometimes I'm not so much the person to help with certain types of strategizing or certain types of practicality or whatever. That might be more my best friend's domain. He's much better at that kind of thing. And it's very calming and I'm very grateful for that. You know, we all have our different things that we're good at, but expect that you are going to have your difficulties and your shadows and the things you're going through respected. Expect to be treated well. And I want to say one other thing about navigating other people through all of your pain and your difficulty when you're going through the worst possible time. One thing about navigating your relationships with other people is that some of them are invariably going to let you down. It might not be the people you expected. They might do it very unceremoniously without even letting you know why. There won't even be so much as a message that says, hey, I'm really sorry I haven't been there for you, but I'm just not sure how to navigate this. Maybe if there's anything you need, you could let me know. No, none of that. They are just going to turn tail and run out of your life because you are not going to be playing the role that they always expected you to. You're not going to be in that good party girl mood that they expected you to be in. That's my situation with a few so-called friends. They just don't know how to handle you being the center of attention, or they don't know how to handle the fact that you are going to be incontrovertibly sad rather than being that good time person that they're used to. They don't know how to navigate real shit sometimes, in some cases. Prepare for some anger around that. Prepare for some shock around that. And then prepare to let it go. Make your decisions. Make your decisions about the fact that, you know what, you don't deserve that. You are not going to be there for those people anymore in the same capacity that you were. You're not going to consider them a part of your inner sanctum. You can make those decisions, but then let the anger go. I remember early on in my bereavement process, calling my friend up, a really close friend of mine who's had several very extreme bereavements, including one of his closest friends. And I said to him, is it normal for me to be obsessing over who's not getting in touch with me, who's not reaching out? People I really thought would reach out, who are not doing. Is it normal for me to be wringing my hands over that and being fucking angry? And he said, it is, but you've got to let it go. Trust me, darling. I've been there. And let me tell you now, it's far better for you to focus on who you do have, who is there for you, and really like lean into the sanctity of that and the sanctuary of that. It's far better to do that than to keep thinking and obsessing over, why has that person abandoned me? Why isn't that person messaging me? What the fuck is going on in their head? Was I just not worth it to them? Are they afraid of my grief? Are they afraid that they can't be effectual? for me in my grief? Like, what is it? He said, you'll be waiting a long time for those answers. Some people are just like that. They were there. They were loving up on you. They were making out like it was a really significant connection. And then something happens, your life goes to shit and you don't see them for dust. That's just the way it happens in life sometimes. But he said to me, Kelly, if you focus too much on that and not enough on what is going on right now, that we are there for you, that we are offering you protection and support and space holding, it's going to eat you up, my love. And I really tried to take that into account. But, you know, definitely be prepared to be surprised by a few of the people that don't show up. The people that you showed up for when they were on the floor. The people that actually know what you're going through because they've been through something really similar. The people that right up until just before the shit show were telling you how much they admire you, how much they love you, how much they want to spend more time with you. Those people, yeah, they might just literally duck out on you, air your calls, arrange to spend time with other people, some of whom they know that you don't like and who have fucked you over. Oh yeah, people get very weird when the shit hits the fan in your life and they realize like, oh my God, you're not going to play that role anymore where you do these things for me and I enjoy the lightheartedness of the... No, now shit got real. Now my fucking brother died. Now shit got real. And now I see really the true measure of your character. And that did mess me up. It made me very illuminated about friendship and about what I expect, but it fucked me up for quite a while. It hurt me. And one or two of them did try and come in later and, you know, rectify their mistake, but it was too late. It was too late. If you weren't a friend to me during that shit show of the first year of my death of my brother, you can't be a friend to me now because you don't fucking know me. I am not the same version of myself that I was when we were going to parties and dressing up and having a gay old fucking time. You didn't want to be with me when I was lying on the bedrock of my own soul, struggling to grasp onto the thin thread of desire to live. You didn't want to know me then? Fuck off then. You kind of have to be that way. You have to be like, no, you can't come back from that. It's not possible. There might be one or two exceptions because that person was going through something just as difficult or whatever. But in the main, people will really show you the caliber of what you thought was a good friendship when the shit hits the fan in your life. Be prepared to be disappointed. Be prepared to be shocked. Be prepared to be sad and scared about the way people will just fully not sign up to be there for you. It's scary out there. It's like a jungle sometimes. I want to finish this video today by talking about some of the good stuff that can come out of something so harrowing. And I know that might sound weird for some people, but I'm talking about finding meaning. I'm not talking about sitting around trying to figure out why it was good that my brother died. It's never going to be good that my brother died, okay? But it's about deciding what happens next and how incredibly fortifying that can be and how it can mesmerize you because you get to see one of the most potent magician-like versions of yourself in action. The most intense and profound agency you will ever have on this planet is when you're faced with an absolute tower moment where something is crumbling, something will never be the same. You've lost something so monumental. And in that moment, you get to decide what the fuck happens next. You get to decide what will you make out of this ash and rubble and smoke and debris. You get to decide how this is going to become something else. You get to be the psycho-spiritual alchemist of your reality. And even in posing the question to yourself, what is this going to mean? Because that's on me. I get to decide what it means. Even in posing that question to yourself, something righteous is happening. You always have a choice about your story, how it's going to be written, how you're going to own it, and how you're going to tell it to others. I didn't want my story to be, my brother died, so I went backwards on everything I've done to heal myself and to connect with my spirituality and all of that. I went back on it all. I got heavily into just drugs and partying. I got eating disordered again. I started self-harming. And, no one can really blame me. It's a free pass. My brother died. So I went back into all that old shit. Not that I'm like against the drugs and partying, but I mean, I like that in a recreational, occasional way. I'm talking about like throwing myself into just abandoning and wrecking my body, right? And just always being high or something. I decided that was not going to be my story. Could it have been my story? Sure. Would it have been understandable? I think, yeah. I think anybody would look at that and be like, well, yeah, obviously she's gone completely off the rails and she's gone back to all that badness because something so terrible happened. But I knew that's not for me. One thing that has really come out of this experience for me so far is that I have witnessed full frontally the gargantuan reserves of strength and resilience that I have built over time, that I take credit for, and that I was actually moved to use to help me to survive. And I have marveled at that. Marvel at yourself when you actually are managing to scrape through something so disastrous. We just don't self-marvel enough, baby. We just don't marvel at ourselves enough for the strength, for the willingness to carry on. It's incredible. We should look at that shit. We should honor that shit. I remember a few times in the very early stages of this ongoing bereavement journey, having almost kind of like out-of-body experiences where I went up to the ceiling in the corner of the room and I looked down on myself, sobbing on the floor, inhaling my brother's clothes, just to get his scent. Just alone in the dark. Fucked. And I remember looking at myself and thinking, wow, you have so much zest to live. Like, you're really doing it, bitch. Like, how does that feel? And I'm like, it feels like shit. I wanted to die. I wanted to die more than once. I wanted to starve myself. I wanted to go back to razor blades. I wanted to do all of those things. All the old habits that gave me a sense of control. Even though none of them ever gave me a sense of control at all. They just gave me the illusion of control. But I did not give in to those instincts, my loves. I didn't self-destruct. That's something good about what's happened. I stopped overgiving overnight. I'd always had this problem for years on and off about being an overgiver, especially with certain types of friendships or certain types of relationship or whatever, certain types of dynamic. I've been dealing with that on and off in my therapy and even before my therapy for quite a while. And it was getting better. I remember describing myself as an overgiver in recovery. But the minute I found out my brother had left this material plane, I stopped overgiving. It had just gone. It just went. Because I was like, I expect now that this is about me. The friends of mine who can't handle that and won't be there for me through that, fuck them. I don't want them anywhere near me anymore. I stopped making excuses for people. I stopped giving people the benefit of the doubt. I demanded more. I had a couple of friends in my life who, sure, remained my friends during the grief process, but it was very selfish. It was very like not messaging me all month about how I am and then messaging me at the end of the month to ask if they could borrow some money. Oh, and by the way, how are you? I cut them out. I cut them out. I'm not doing this with people. No. If I can't expect reciprocity for what I've given previously to you at a time like this, there isn't enough of a foundation for us to have a connection. And I'm not overgiving to you by convincing myself that you actually don't mean to hurt me. You don't mean to dismiss me. No, I will let you show me who you are. You show me who you are through your actions, and I'll make the necessary decision about how I'm going to deal with that. I just stopped overgiving. It's just nowhere near as much of a problem. It's pretty much gone. I just don't do it anymore. I don't overgive in ways that make me feel sad and weird and angry. Pretty much for the first time in my life, when my brother died, I felt very righteously that this is about me now. Me. I need the help. I can't give anything to anyone else. I need you to come to me with a Tupperware of food or with a beautiful message or with a care package or, check on me. If that isn't happening, then we're not happening. It was very clarifying. And I'm grateful for that. I noticed the swiftness with which my work evolved, you know, my work with clients, one-on-one, my readings, my sessions. As soon as I went back to work, it was like a whole new bunch of rooms full of empathy and shared experience and willingness to really sit with the gritty tangibility of something difficult had all opened up. It was like a fucking skeleton key. If I thought I was good at my work before, which I did, I was tenfold better afterwards. And I can really talk to people about grief now in a way I couldn't before. Just like I can really talk to people about physical injury and chronic pain now in a way that I couldn't before my back injury played up, right? Same thing. Same thing. I understand how bad it can get. Therefore, I'm going to be a better class of person to listen. I'm going to be a better class of space holder because I've really been there. So the way I've injected my experience of grief into my work has been overwhelming. And in the months after my brother died, a lot of people messaged me saying, do you mind if I book a session with you about the death of my sibling? It's okay if that's too much for you, but I just feel like because you've lost your sibling, I feel like I want to talk to you about the death of my sibling. And I was like, babe, go right ahead. I feel like I couldn't be any more qualified than I am now. And I know that I gave significantly important things in those calls because I can go there. I can really, really understand sometimes things, very specific things that people say that I couldn't have understood before. It's not going over my head now when people say it, it's going in here. Bravery. Bravery is a good thing that comes from grief, loss, heartbreak, disaster, the tower moment. Because you suddenly feel that everything is clear. Everything that you really want to do becomes clear. The things that are petty, that are not important, that you don't want to put your energy into, become clear. The fact that, you know what, if that could happen, if something so terrible could happen, maybe anything could happen. Maybe I'll go for that thing I've been scared to go for. Maybe I'll go and travel that city or do that festival or whatever the fuck I've been holding back on. Maybe I'll do that. I did a lot of cool shit the first year after my brother died. My friend was listing out some of the things that I did not long ago. How I wanted to grasp life. I was in agony, yes, of course, every moment. But there was something in me that was also like, fuck it. Not in a really reckless, dangerous way, but in a way where I stopped holding myself back. Darlings, if you're going through something really bloody, painful, outrageously heartbreaking, that's to do with loss, that's to do with inconceivable pain, hold on to what you've got. Hold on to whatever helps you. If it wasn't the tool that you expected that you would reach for, doesn't matter. Just reach for it. Just let yourself have it. Please know that there is a moment attached to every moment, okay? It's like a wondrous beaded necklace. If you're not feeling this moment that you're in right now, another will be along shortly, and they are all individual beads. They're all different. You might experience a few sucky ones in a row, but my darlings, every moment gives birth to a different moment and a different moment. Please have the faith to know that those moments will change and that you'll experience different things with each. And when you're going through a few really fucking bad ones, a few sucky days, a few terrible hours, hold on. Know that there is no right way to grieve. There is no perfect way to fall apart. There is no sublime, acceptable, standard way, the way that is approved of, the quality controlled way of losing your shit. You have to take it day by day. It's all going to be a jumble sometimes. It's going to be a lot of different things packed into one singular day sometimes. But just understand that if you know that you are self-destructing or you're moving more towards self-destructive ways of coping, you have the opportunity right now to make a decision not to do that. Every time you make a choice that diverts you from self-destruction and moves you towards something more respectful, more self-loving, more self-aware, even just safer, you're doing something holy in that moment. Divinity is at work in that moment. Thank you so much for listening to these thoughts and feelings. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments, any feedback, anything you want to share with me, I'd be more than happy to read it. If you enjoyed this video, if you got something out of it, if it helped you, if you think it might help you to help someone else, please slap the like on it. The algorithm gods will like that very much. Subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Go and check out the online store if you want to speak with me, if you want me to read cards for you, if you want me to do a counselling session for you. And thank you so much for listening to me talking a lot more about my personal journey and my personal difficulty. It means the world. Please don't worry about me. You know, in the immortal words of Sheryl Crow, every day's a winding road. I get a little bit closer to feeling fine. Sorry. Much love, darlings. Until next time. Blessed be.